much for coming today. Today we're actually quite fortunate to have Ben. Ben has been a friend for a long time, together with Doreen, I think, right? Not so many years ago, honestly like that. But Ben is actually quite interesting because when I knew Ben was actually doing law. It was quite a while ago. And the next thing I knew was that he bought a company, right, and made it really big, right? So Ben now...
that's the abridged version.
It's the abridged version.
Yes.
It's a very abridged version, but that's I think what is important, right? So Ben actually has been an entrepreneur, I think almost ever since I know you, right? I mean, and I think we are fortunate to actually get Ben to talk a little bit about his experience. And Ben runs a communications company, right? He'll explain what he does. And I think all of us in our work require communications. So maybe you get some hints from him, right? Which is the best pipe to subscribe to, right? And I think I'm actually looking forward to perhaps even the Q&A afterwards, right? To see whether if you guys have any questions for Ben. So without further ado, let me just introduce Ben.
Thanks, John. So, won't be that by PowerPoint. I only have 11 slides, including this one and the end slide that says Q&A. So, should be quite a quick one. I thought I'd just run you through quickly what SuperInternet actually does, and some of the things that I'm saying might make more sense. I don't mean to try and sell you stuff per se, but just so that you know what we're up to, and that might form a bit of a basis for some of the other comments that I will make as we go along. So, all the wrong reasons to be an entrepreneur. We'll come to that. Very quickly, our timeline. I'm not going to read everything. SuperInternet has been around since '98. There are two companies: SuperInternet, and SuperInternet Access. Access was a SBO. If you're familiar with the regime in Singapore, you need a license to provide telecom services. So we were an SBO as early as 2000. In 2002, managed to get our single largest PO from a certain GovSG department at 2.2 mil. So I think we had a fairly decent ramp up. Everybody wants it to be faster, but I'm not too upset about this. 2005, if you recall, there was this thing called level 3 phone numbers that were launched. We got our level 3 numbers within that. We launched the Excel voice service. We have 30,000 phone numbers reachable. That's our own phone numbers, right? Not a PRI service from Singtel or StarHub where you actually subsell it out. These are numbers allocated to us. And we launched a hosted call manager service, virtual VRI. Panasonic sets had our lines actually going in and out of the SIP cards in the keyphone system. 2009 was a good year. We were awarded a contract for police sites, and that remains our single largest customer. So all the police stations today, all NPCs, we used to have the NPPs, we no longer have the NPPs. Of course, we no longer have it because it's a bad deal, right? It was a good deal, I would have taken it, I guess. Okay, anyway, but we still have the NPPs. NPCs, we no longer have the NPCs. And in 2010, if you recall, the NGNBN was launched, and we jumped right into the NGNBN. Youth Olympic Games was that year. We provided lines to all the venues for 5G. 2011, we had other interesting things like the GE. We had lines to general elections. We had lines to all the Garmo sites and all the rally sites and all. So it's all transmission. It's all about transmission. We managed to do an emergency rollout. If you recall, again, 2011, there was a Bukong fire, and we managed to roll out all the lines there within about 4 hours. Yeah. You know the one about they had one episode of Hawaii Five-O in Singapore? You know, and Steve McGarrett and Daniel Benny, right? So he was looking at, where this is going. Anyway, 2012, I get better after a few things. How come by-elections was awarded? We have our second term contract. We managed to do a fiber ring around Sentosa. We did the by-elections. We got a little bit of somebody decided to put some money with us. And in 2014, we have an FPO, right? So it's no longer an SPO, but we actually roll out our own fiber. So 2014 onwards, we've been rolling out our infrastructure. Today, we've done Suntec, we've done Raffles Place in Singapore, we've done, or at least 70% done for Raffles Place. We've done the airport, we've done the prisons, we have OG boxes along the road. These are all there and operational. And we have the elections department term contract awarded to us 2015. That's why right now we're actually preparing for the presidential elections. We're preparing the sites, so that's a term contract. Infrastructure build up, Bukit Batok by-elections, that's pretty much kept us busy last year. So this is basically just a quick overview of what we've been up to over the various, over the many years. And this is a very quick diagrammatic representation of the stuff we do. In summary, we are a telco. We're not big, never pretended to be that huge, but we do have a full FBO license. We do have our own fiber in the ground. We do have our own phone numbers, SS7 Interconnect, we run hosted. We do have network engineering capability in-house, and building on our FBO license, dark fiber, we provide optical Ethernet, 1 gig, 10 gig. Some of our largest customers are between Equinix and Global Switch. We provide a transport there, and today we have a good few, I think it's probably about 100 gig worth of ports allocated. The traffic between Equinix just down the road here and Global Switch. So that's our optical Ethernet loop. We also do something called private physical networks. These are specialized services where even at the telco layer, and this may or may not make sense to all, if you're an entrepreneur in a small-ish company, nothing wrong with being small-ish, we're small, but may not make sense, but if you are a large-ish organization and you feel security is at a premium and you want to ensure that any equipment that you use is not shared with anybody else, even at the telco layer, this is what we can do. So the dark fiber goes out, but you have your own dedicated equipment at various spots. And I'm talking about CPE, I'm talking about telco back-end equipment. This is a private physical network. Right? So the lines are really used for WAN clustering, surveillance over WAN. We can do head-end filtering for internet access services, but really I just wanted to give a quick overview that this is the stuff that we do, and based on this set of capabilities, we push out a premium high availability service, as well as an ad hoc and rapid deployment service. If you happen to need a gig line from Suntec back to Equinix, we can do it in a matter of hours. That's the kind of thing. So yeah, that's a quick overview of what Super Internet does, and that's how we, again, the abridged version of how we've grown over the years since 98, well, late 98 actually, almost December 98 when we started, till today. So it might sound like a great reason to be an entrepreneur because, well, I started this, and it's been tough. So what are the reasons, what are the wrong reasons? Because this looks like a good enough reason to some people why you should be an entrepreneur. You could do something similar like that. I don't think to be the only one to be able to deliver this. But let's think about it. The number one wrong reason to be an entrepreneur, to start your own, is money. Or the last of it. Consider how much is enough for you. All that I have plus $1 more, right? That's the usual refrain. But how much is enough? And why are you starting this? How much is enough? And then you compare it with a corporate job. For those of you who are IT professionals, so actually, let me take one step back a moment. I realized I didn't qualify this. This slide, all these slides and this whole session is really focused on being an IT entrepreneur. I can't speak for being a F&B entrepreneur, although I suppose certain things will carry over. But really, this is IT entrepreneur. That's just to limit my scope a little bit here. Compared to a corporate job, if you're IT graduate, IT professional, whether a degree, a diploma in the Singapore context, it's okay. But you're an IT professional, system administrator type position, center of the road, 80-20 principle, bell curve, right? Never mind about the extreme one end, those people that even drop out of school and just don't want to do anything. And the extreme end, which have basically just good luck and go fly. But 80% in the dead center of your bell curve, if you're an IT professional, within 5-10 years of your working life, you would be easily drawing anywhere from easily 60, if not 100,000 a year, easily, right? So within 10 years to hit the 100, even towards 150 with bonuses a year, is well achievable for an IT professional in the 10-year mark, with minimal risk to yourself and not even talking about. If that is enough, if that sounds reasonable to you, why are you taking all the risk? And on the upside of that, towards the 200, 300, it's quite doable. Yeah, you're already going towards the tail of the building, but well into the 100K, no problem. Most people would get that already. Is that enough for you? If that's enough for you, then why are you taking the risk? So money shouldn't be the reason, unless of course you have greeds that exceed that, then okay, that might be a reason. But we're coming to that. How much capital do you have to burn? Where's the money coming from when you're starting out as an entrepreneur? You talk about money, you have to make money, you need money to make money. That's the sad fact, you see. You've got no money, you have to make money. If you have a lot of money, it's usually quite easy to make more money. It's one of those things, you know. It's like banks giving you an umbrella and then taking it away when it rains, right? So we're coming to banks in a moment. But the point is that how much capital do you have? Where is it coming from? Maybe if you're lucky, you have some seed funding right at day one, that will be very good. At least you have some cushion there. If not, it's coming out from your own pocket. Your initial, whatever it may be. I started Super Internet on about 50,000. That's about it. That came from all over the place. Right? And every month you'll be earning money. Rental, even at a relatively low cost place like here, I think it's relatively low cost. I'm not sure exactly how this place works, unfortunately, but I know as an incubator and all that, it's somewhat reasonable rents and all. But still, monthly rental every month, every day, your basic food and transport and all that, that's all going to deplete all the way down. Your initial purchase of PCs or purchase of monitors. If you get a small office, you have to start to think about. I still remember the first time we bought an office, we had to make a decision. Door in front. Do you want to change it to a glass door? How much is a glass door? An entrepreneur will know. A lot of corporate people won't know. Maybe those in finance or procurement might know. You ask a corporate person, how much is a glass door? 4 offices for glass door, right? Yeah. But usually the office units come with only the wooden door. You want a glass door, that's $3,000 a door. Do I want to spend $3,000 on my 50K on the glass door? That's the kind of thing you face as an entrepreneur. And you say, no, but must have one. No, $3,000 out of 50,000. Do or don't do? Do you want to do that? That's how much capital do you have to burn? And in all likelihood, again, talking about center of the road here, different context, same graph, center of the road, entrepreneurs in the center of the road there, you'll be burning money easily for the whole first year. If you can get to cash flow positive within a year, it's fantastic already. If you do it within 2 years, I think you're well within norms still. Right? So you're just burning money all the way. Even when you draw your pay, you say, yeah, but I need to draw some pay, and maybe you have a funds injected by somebody, so that's good. And maybe they even allow you to draw some pay because they're nice people. Okay, I don't know. Maybe I'm okay, so ask him how much can I draw. Okay, but the main thing is that even if you're drawing money, that's money that could be used to expand the business. So you tend to take out very minimal because you need your 3,000 for your car store, right? Because it's not a good, right? So forgo the 3,000 from your pay for this month, and you can buy the car store. But it's that kind of nonsense, or maybe it's not nonsense, but it's that kind of decision that you're going to be hit with money. Money becomes very real to you in more ways than one, because it is not a given that if you carry on with life for this month and just drag yourself to work, the paycheck will end up in your account on the 25th or 28th or whatever date it is that they pay you. And in between there, really cannot tahan, you can go and take an MC for 2 days and you'll still get your paycheck. Doesn't work that way as an entrepreneur. You need to carry on and slave and slog at it, whether you're programming something, whether you're developing, whether you're maintaining something. Doesn't matter whether you're a software developer or a hardware integration type thing, or you're just doing some services. If you are not at your customer's place at a billable time cost, you're bleeding. How much money do you have to burn? That's the reality of the money question. Even if you have inject at the start, and if you don't have inject at the start, it's well and truly into your own pocket. Right. Most entrepreneurs, and the other thing you have to face, the reality is, yes, there are lots of books that talk to you about all kinds of things, whether it's about not making U-turns or making U-turns, or other things about how to make it big as an entrepreneur. You see Steve Jobs, people always rattle on you. These are the tail of your bell curve, right? Stats lesson, T-test, two-tail. Okay, you will not. These are the tails in the bell curve. A large chunk of entrepreneurs do not make it big. I don't say do not make it, do not make it big. Majority, vast majority of entrepreneurs do not make it big. Let that fact sink in. I'm not saying you can't make it, but fact is majority do not make it big. In the same breath, I will tell you, a large majority, a significant majority, I don't have these actual numbers that I'm sure you can data mine them somewhere, depending who wants to slant the facts which way. You might have heard me saying before, some people say that stats, right, on the net, or stats in certain newspapers that are slanted one way or another, they use statistics the way a drunkard uses a lamppost, not for illumination, but for support. Okay, so you have to slice and dice the stats whichever way you want, but for a fact, not many make it. Not many make it big. I keep catching myself there. I didn't say not many actually don't make it, but don't make it big. In the same breath, not many actually go totally bankrupt at all. Not that many. As a matter of safety net, in terms of probability being your safety net, not too bad also. But are you okay to just cruise along and then you look at some other people? Because inevitably we will compare. There's always these people that will tell you, some motivational guru, don't compare, just look at yourself and all that, how bullshit. You will compare, you look around left, right, center, what's my classmate doing? You can consciously say, I don't want to compare, you will compare. And the guy with the corporate job, no problem. I came from the law faculty. Yes, I actually graduated, in case anybody was asking. Is it the reason why you didn't? Why because you dropped out? I said, no, actually I passed. Okay. But the point is, my classmates, just about all our partners already today. Yeah. Partner in a law firm. Oh. Just imagine big numbers, okay? You'll be somewhere in the right ballpark. I mean, look at it this way: our politicians tag their pay to lawyers, right? So because top 10 professions, so it's in that league, right? Okay, now, do you want? So you might not make it big. So is it worthwhile? Is it worth the risk if you don't hit that? Because to actually hit it, it's different. You are outside the norm, you know. You are chasing a dream. Yes, you're chasing a dream. Nothing wrong with chasing a dream, but be realistic in that know that not all entrepreneurs make it big, and most would not. So is it still worth trying? Freedom, flip the coin the other way, control. Freedom and control, control, freedom, freedom, control. Right? Well, some people say, no, I want to be my own boss, I want to be an entrepreneur because I want the freedom to do what I want to do. I don't want to listen to hierarchical control and a boss telling me that you should go and do this part of the research or that part. I will do what's right. I want to do what's good. I feel that it is correct to go with C# instead of Java, and I don't want a boss telling me otherwise. I feel like going for Ethereum and not Bitcoin if you're a software developer. At the hardware, I would say, hey, not enough people focusing on Linux-based deployments, too many people doing Windows-based. We will go with the open source camp all the way. And I don't want a boss to tell me, I don't want to be in an IT department or something where I have to explain to the boss why open source is actually safe. So I want to be my entrepreneur, I want to be my own boss. Is that a good reason? Not a good reason. What about all the other things? Who does the other things that need to be done? You may say you have more control of your time, you have more freedom from this. But the reality is, you still have to produce back to money again, right? Something useful. The market, you're not convincing your boss. You're convincing the whole damn market. The market, I say, but it's faster to just use, some time ago, I was riding against this, but some time ago, some of you will remember because most people here are quite young. Okay, that Cold Fusion, oh fantastic, rapid deployment, Cold Fusion, just go and use it. I think you're gonna get stuck, I hate that thing. But everybody was jumping into it, Cold Fusion. But market dictates that. You may say, no, we should hand code it. Because when you hand code the thing, you have some longevity in it. If somebody drops that product or something, you're just stuck in the way there. What happens to that? How do you manage the library changes? What happens if you're developing in Gupta? What happens if you're developing in Actor now today? You're stuck. And you say, looking at history, I shouldn't do it that way. But the market might dictate that you have to do it that because all the tenders out, all the requests out there are for Cold Fusion, for Java development today. You like Java today? Some of you maybe still do, some of you don't. Some of you have already seen the problems with Java, but the whole issue is you don't have that control. You do not have that freedom. You may not be a boss immediately above you, even if you rise to IT manager type position. It may not be your COO breathing down your neck, but it's the market breathing down your neck. You're not going to get that freedom anyway. So that's another lousy reason to be your own boss. Because you'll find that you're driven. And who does the other things? And if you say no, it's because it's not so much this kind of technological decision, but it's more a case of I don't want to be bogged down by administrative work. Maybe you're a real engineer at heart. You want to do engineering, you like engineering, you do not want to actually be bogged down by administrative. You don't want to do sales because you're not a salesperson. You want to be a software developer. You want to be a network engineer. You want to be a data security expert. You want to focus there. Good. Worthy aim. Nothing wrong with that. But when you're your own boss, so you have your office now, you're your own boss, you're the data security expert. Water at the water cooler hour. You need to go and change it. That's your time. If you have one staff, we'll talk about staff later, but you have one staff, who's going to calculate the CPF contribution, click on the thing and do CPF? Oops, my staff on reservist, wait, I got to submit MINDEF claim. Yeah, stupid system, why is the system like that? Because I got to submit MINDEF claim and then on which day, then, he took MC and he didn't actually go for his thing. Now I got to reverse out the whole thing. Stupid fella. You end up doing HR, you end up doing accounts, you end up typing your own codes. What do you mean you don't want to do sales, you want to be your own boss because you want to be engineering and all, so then who sells your stuff for you? You're going to end up having to sell your own things, you're going to end up having to do your own proposals, you're going to having to do your own presentation on why people should use your wonderful piece of software. Why people should use your wonderful services as a data security expert. So, another lousy reason, because you have more control, you direct, you have to focus. Nonsense. You will find that you have to do everything else, more so than if you were in a corporate environment. So, next lousy reason. You want to be boss. Absolute monarchy. I'm going to be a despot in the office. Right? Slave driver. Absolute monarchy. The corporation is the extension of the feudal fiefdom. This is my territory. This land is mine. I say you all do, I fire you. Yes, you have that in your control. You still need your cannon fodder. How many gamers down here? At least, how many will admit to be gamers? You still need your peons, You need cannon fodder, you need the grenadiers that you just throw in front of some ball. You still need some of those, okay? The sad truth is you need some of those. But in this case, sometimes, nobody wants to be a peon. Nobody wants to work for you. You HR every day just going job street, jobs TV, putting up your ads, the book comes in, goes out again in one. People don't like working for small companies here. You find hard to attract people. So, you want to be a monarch, fine. So you have your army. Nobody wants to be your soldiers. And you don't have freedom. You talk about freedom. Oh, but I'm my own boss. I don't need to submit any leave application. Nobody to cancel my leave halfway. I just want to go on leave. You go on leave when WannaCry is out there. Your program, assuming you're a software developer, let's say you're an integrator, all the web servers that you've set up, have they all been patched out there? Those that you are responsible for as managed service. In terms of software, there's a new exploit, some cross-site script, some whatever it is, a new exploit is up. How many of your things are based on that? Customer patches something, everything collapses, and you're on holiday. Your holiday is going to be very short, and very nasty, brutish and short, like life. Okay, so what freedom do you have? What freedom are you talking about? Freedom to go on holiday. You will not be able to take a single holiday for a good number of years until you find your peons. Or at least one degree up from the peons. Because nobody else will be able to handle your stuff. It's all on your head. You have no holidays, so don't dream. Lousy reason. I have freedom to do things I want to do. I have more time on my own by being my own boss, by being an entrepreneur. Bad reason. Doesn't work that way. In fact, coming back to corporate work, and to some extent, even for me, the guys working for me, I'm glad to say, so far all good guys. But we've had some rotten apples. And the smallest little thing, my kids sick today, okay, take leave, take MC. Anyway, got 30 days MC a year, right? So must take all, and if not, what's the point? So, and these guys, they will just take MC, urgent leave any time. Yeah, you can do that if you have a corporate job. As your own boss, more freedom. You don't want to go into the office today, you try. Customer calling, directs to your handphone. How many staff do you have to take the call if not? And they can't take it, what happens? Goes to your handphone. Oh, but I'm on leave today. It goes to your handphone. You still want the customer tomorrow, you will take the call. So don't talk about freedom. No holidays. How much rocket fuel do you have in you? My candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night. But all my foes and friends, it gives a beautiful light. If you have enough rocket fuel to clear the gravity of being an entrepreneur, to clear emotionally at least, it's definitely going to be a crash. You have to put everything into it. You have to crawl back and find a corporate job. So do you have enough of capital to last? Those are my 3 top wrong reasons to be an entrepreneur. But let me give you some more bad news. Give you some right reasons first and bad news. So what are the right reasons? 2 sides. This is draw on the dark side you can, or also reasons from the light side there are. Now, love for what you want to do, passion. Depending on your religious persuasion, you might understand love is the greatest of all. I just want to do it. You're passionate about it. From the dark side, anger, vengeance. You can draw from both. I'm neutral, it's okay with me. You can draw from anger and vengeance also. But that's a reason. That's a good reason. Lousy things. This market is crazy. People are doing the wrong thing. I want to show you how to run a telco. The big telcos around don't know how to run the network. I know how to run the network. I will show you how to run the network. I will show you that it can be done. At the cost of my life. You have that. That's a good reason to run your own business. That's a good reason to be an entrepreneur. V for vendetta. Okay, vengeance. Vendetta is also good, yeah. Some words are substitutable. Slight shade of difference. You're going to draw from the dark side, from the light side, but the point is, you really want to do this. It goes beyond natural, logical reason in a simplistic way. There's this critique of pure reason, It need not be perfectly logical why you want to be an entrepreneur. But if you want to prove something, you really like what you want to do, that's a good reason. Are you a gambler? Somebody asked me, in fact, I was asked the same question but in a different context. Just last week when we were in, last week was Communic, right? It's in Marina Bay Sands, and somebody casually asked, hey Ben, have you ever been in the casino? And I said, this kind of gambling, I don't believe in this kind of gambling. Stakes are too small. Stakes are way too small. You pay your, what is it now, $100, $200 entrance fee or your annual membership. You can go with a bag of money. Most of you might already be frowning, not a good way to spend money, but still. You can be limited for a couple of $100, $1,000 down the drain lah, but you might have some fun. That's the limit to your loss if you don't really go crazy, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you're gambling with your life. What's your gamble? Are you a gambler? All entrepreneurs are big gamblers. You are saying that this is the bell curve. Most people do not make it big, but it could be me. Yes, only 1 in 10,000. 4-digit numbers, only 1 in 10,000. But it could be me. That's effectively what you're telling yourself and the whole system. Because statistically, it's in the tail of the curve. As I say, most will make it but not make it big. If you still think you're going to make it big and you love what you're doing, you want to prove something, you're a gambler. And the odds are against you. But you're a gambler. Maybe not the first time, but it still could be me. This time I'll be lucky. Are you, I don't know whether this link will work. Oh, yeah, never mind, I'll try and click that, I'll try and make that play later. Some of you may know where that clip comes from. And then I'll finish this quickly. How long more do I have? A couple of minutes, 5 to 10. 5 minutes, yeah, okay. When I see people looking as if they want to throw something at me, I'll stop. Okay, know the reality of being an entrepreneur. Singapore. There's no garage here. A lot of these greats, a lot of the internet greats have this story of starting something in their mother's garage. No such luck here. Most places at home, not enough space, too noisy. You don't even have your own little area to mess up. And it costs too much money, and you'll be pushed out of the house because you don't know what you're doing. You're being a bum. Go and find a job. There's no garage for you to set up. How much is rental here? Rental is at a crazy rate. The smallest one desk in the middle of nowhere that doesn't even look good and may not even give you a credible address is into the 1,000 a month, 500 a month, and that doesn't even count your utilities and everything else. Your overheads for a one-man, two-man show are easily at the bare minimum rock bottom with standard utilities and a space enough to actually work and everything. 1,000, 1,500 a month. Unlikely to be 500. 500 you haven't counted some things. How much do you have again to start with? Coming back to my first slide. So the reality is that there's very little time and space in Singapore for you to think, for you to develop what you want to develop. Not even software development, not even develop your whole model, develop your plan. Enough time for you to face the wall and scheme about how you're going to do something. You need time to scheme. You got no time. 1,500 a month. 30 days. $50 a day. Excluding meals, excluding transport, excluding, we're just bleeding. Don't think faster. Think faster. Scheme quicker. You got no time. There's no garage. Overheads will eclipse you over. It's an avalanche, a tidal wave. The wave will just hit you. That's the reality here. Second reality of finding, of being your own boss in Singapore, you realize straight away who are your fair-weather friends. There are lots of fair-weather friends out there. I have personal experience. Somebody who was the IT manager of a large corporate, and this is when I first started out. Within 1 year I started. Old family friend, known him, he's known me forever, that kind of thing. And he's the IT manager of corporate. Went to see him, hey, system integration, we can do this, you need some of these services. Ben, let's just go for lunch. How can I give you this kind of deal? I don't even know whether you're going to be around tomorrow. And that was spoken straight from God. He doesn't know whether you're going to be around tomorrow or not. I have other friends, lots of them. And sometimes you may ask yourself, do you really want to know? But that's a different issue, whether you really want to know. But they're all around. And you will realize that these people call out the woodwork. Our banks are not your friends. Don't ever kid yourself. If you've been watching too many advertisements on TV, let me confirm that it doesn't work that way, okay? Oh, bank come to your rescue, help you develop your business, rescue, bull! Banks want money, pound of flesh, with blood, lots of it. Nobody is going to give you. Okay, the banks are dead set against SMEs. You've got no leverage. The more you have, the more they want to lend you, and you have no money, you're not going to get set. We also realize that auditors and all that all have very set ways. Now, as an entrepreneur, typically, as I say, depending on which side of the force you're drawing from, the point is still that you want to do something different, usually, right? Or something better. You want to do something better, you want to do something different. But you realize that there's a lot of people all fixed in their set ways, and you're fighting this uphill battle throughout. Always fighting this uphill battle because that's the norm, and you are no longer being in the norm. Almost by definition. Example, audit. And don't get me wrong, we're not talking about auditing, FRS. That's another thing that suddenly you will suddenly know if you're running your own business. You don't get involved in accounting, well, that's not my forte, right? No, but you need to know this. Why did I get involved with this? I was saying audit, I'm not trying to cook the books or anything. We bought so much, we sold so much, and that's my margin in between, right? Can you please audit? Wait. There's this wonderful thing. This is an actual example. Maybe somebody, or maybe Chuck can tell me how to get out of this. But I've asked a few people, but maybe he has the answer. Okay. Capitalization, right? PC, you can capitalize 2 years, 3 years. You have a policy, a servers 3 years. Some people want to write off straight away to claim tax. That's all okay. So if you have a PC, you can consider it IT equipment, and that's within some schedule, and you can say, okay, write off over 2 years, so you spread your cost over 2 years. Up to that point, very easy to understand. Say, hey, wait. I'm an IT company. We are doing SI services. We started as SI, not so much telecoms. I'm not going to buy PCs. I know exactly which power supply I want. I know exactly which graphic card I want. I know exactly which board I want. I want RAM from here. So RAM $200. CPU we buy from this other guy. Power supply, casing, whatever nice casing you like. We put it together. That's my PC, right? And we know how to do it. So why should I buy a Dell? Why should I buy a Lenovo? Why should I buy an HP? That's how we build our PCs. You're techie, right? Okay, so where one PC? Auditors say, wait. PC you can capitalize, but then you bought hard disk for $150, RAM for $200. All these are all below capitalized. So this is, you cannot capitalize this thing, But it's my PC. Cannot. Listen to me, cannot do like that, man. You get into trouble. Cannot. Everybody tell you, cannot. Left, right, center. This is just one example, but you'll be facing this all over the place. Why? Because it's not normal. Because it's not the way people do things. Investors want their pound of flesh just like banks. Since I'm an investor here, I won't say too many bad things. Okay, but but I think it's fair for me to say, consider always whose best interest. Who else has your best interest at heart? It's you. I'm not trying to insist that every single investor is an evil agent and trying to milk the most out of you, but I think it's fair for me to say, all investors want to make money, right? I'm not going to invest in you if you don't make money. I'm not going to throw money just for fun, on a whim. Investors want their money, but do they have your best interest at heart? No, they have your interest at heart to the extent that they will help you to make them some money. If you are not making them some money, then their best interest, which may not be your best interest, may be to just pull the plug. And for them, it's called cut loss. For you, it's help. Why like that? Always know who has your best interest at heart. It's probably yourself. You'll not have branding at the start. You may be a good person out there. You may have had some good publicity, but you generally will not have branding at the start. And without branding, you are in the business of selling a good solution, with a good proposal, good coding, good program. You are not in the business, and you have no capability to be in the business of selling armor plating for parts. Which is what a significant number of IT managers out there are shopping for. They're not shopping for the most avant-garde solution. They're not shopping for really solution. They are shopping for part covering. And you are not in that business. You will not be able to take any of those deals. But those deals are plenty. And at the risk of, that is so unlike me, of taking a swipe at the Singapore climate, so unlike me. Singapore is not a great place for SMEs. Face it, the reality is that I'm hoping it will change. Maybe it will. As I say again, I'm hoping it will. But as of now, I will tell you, it's not good for SMEs. A lot of people, the Silicon Valley, which is usually the poster place of all startups become big. So they generally are willing to lend you an ear. You could be the next big thing. Now you're small, this is interesting, you could be the next big thing. Over here, all the big things are all GLC invested in by Temasek already. There's no more big thing to come out. You so good, how come you didn't do 4A, 2S paper and become a president scholar? So cannot be good. Not many people are willing to give you a chance in the Singapore climate. All small companies are just there floundering. Oh, you must have started your own because you don't want to work for people, right? And especially if you are SME, somehow in competition with a GLC, you are squeezed left, right, center in the whole game. Almost done. Just a quick one about corporate culture. Have you all seen this one? Somebody could have seen it because I recycle my slides, like all speakers say. To recycle some slides, not come out everything fresh. When you're starting a company or as an entrepreneur, you're looking for partners and all that. This is kind of a different tag again. Right? I'm talking about when you're looking for partners, have to understand as an entrepreneur versus your partner, does he have the same entrepreneurial spirit? Does he want to do the same? Does he have the same kind of worldview and outlook? Right? This is not a religious-based discussion. That's a separate thing altogether. Right? And this is my parking diagram. There's this two driver, right, who is on the line and parked down here. This is you, and this is another car. So the question here is, if you have this driver who is parked like that, what will you do? Are you of the mindset that, no, I must park in the dead center, I will not perpetuate the problem. This guy is okay, and I will not perpetuate the problem. Park properly in the center, you can go and die. Because there's no point carrying on and going all the way, then everybody move out, and then you will also be seen to be out. Do not perpetuate the problem, the buck stops here, that guy is wrong, I will not make it any more wrong. Or are you of the mindset that actually the lot out there based on the picture still quite big? It's okay, I can move a little bit to the right, and move a bit to the right, then everybody still has enough space. After all, if I go too near him, he might scratch my car. So why don't we just live and let live? I just move a little bit, okay I'll be nearer the line, but there's still enough space for everybody. So why take it so hard? There's no point trying to squeeze this kind of thing. It's okay we can all live and let live. Right? Don't give yourself more problem. Bastard, this idiot, you park in the line, just squeeze and make sure he cannot open his door. Shame the fella put a nasty note on the screen and say, go and die, you know how to park, how your mother teach you how to park. Too much to think about. I think we park elsewhere. Find a different one. Obviously, this is all spoken in jest, but are your partners all seeing things in the same way? If you're trying to get people, birds of a feather, you need enough people. I'm not here to preach about which is the preferred scenario, and you might want to guess which one I am, but that's okay. But the point is, when you have people like this versus like this, especially,
we're still laughing.
Things that you are wrong.
So you need to figure out how many people in your organization are which way. On the same note, in a slightly different context, if you look at your Facebook feeds, I happily assume everybody is generally on Facebook. It's just more or less only. You realize that people like this pseudo philosophy. have seen, memes, the writing on the wall with the pictures, right? And you'll realize that if you analyze them, they always fall into two broad categories. The be something, do something, it could be you, seize the day, cut down. You want, it could be you. Never forsake your dream. Versus the accept things as they are. Look at it. Don't stress yourself. Consider what means most to you. This is time when you're dying, you won't say you didn't do enough for your job. It's all about friends. Think about your loved ones. Have you seen something wrong? What have you done to make the world a better place today? You have to have faith in yourself. I'm not saying that this group cannot be an entrepreneur, but it's perhaps more the domain of this group. But either way, when you have both of these in the same office, both holding the reins, you have a problem. Some people call it unequally yoked, but that's a different context. But you have a problem. So try and get to the bottom of which side you are. Or are you the confused one and say, never mind, all these memes all too complicated. I think we just don't read any of them. Anyway, we can carry on. Okay, last slide. So there's this story about two fishermen. Traditionally, it's said to be a Malay fisherman and a Chinese fisherman, but it's not a racial slur, I assure you. It's just the way the story comes about. It doesn't matter what the race are of the fishermen, but you have two fishermen, and one fisherman had just come back from his fishing trip, and he was hanging up his nets and having his fish out in the bucket, jumping, and he was just lying back in the sun on the sand and relaxing. Down the road, there's this fisherman Tauke, like big boss of a fisherman, walked around and said, "Oh, this lazy bugger." Anyway, I'm in a good mood today. Let's see whether we can do the world a favor, right? So he decides to walk over to him. Hey, hi, what are you doing? Oh, I just finished my catch, so now I'm relaxing. I say, hey, what you have caught down there is enough for you and your family. If you go out again, it's still very early. If you go out again, you could catch more fish than you need. Then you say, yeah, okay, but what for? Let me explain to you in farming. You catch more than you need. This is enough. You can bring it to the market to sell and get some money. He says, okay, but what for? What do you mean what for? You get more money, you buy a bigger boat, you can go out, you can catch more. Maybe if you work hard instead of lying there like that, you work hard in years to come, you can be like me. You see my man going out down there and I don't need to actually go out. You buy a bigger boat, you get more fish, you sell in the market, and that's how a business grows. Instead of what you're doing. You say, okay, but you have to tell me, all this, what for? He said, well, if you have boats and men and people going out, then you don't actually have to work. You can just lie back in the sand and relax. That's what I'm doing now. Some of you saw where this is going. But the point is finally, are you a lifestyle entrepreneur? Is it enough if the company brings in enough for you to play golf 3 times a week or whatever it is you want to do? Or do you want to build an empire? How much is enough? What are you trying to do with it? Or are you a .com entrepreneur? You must sell off. Or are you okay just to catch enough for you and your family? And relax in the sun, it's okay. But what's the viewpoint? So, in summary, I leave you with this question, if you will, if I dare. mess with in this story. Where do you draw the line between greed and hard work? Where do you draw the line between laziness and contentment? When you figure it out, you're an entrepreneur. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. You know, hearing you speak reminds me of this story that I read somewhere. There was this guy who started his shop and wanted to brand his stuff, right? So he put down there, best quality, right? And the other guy on the other side saw it and said, oh shit, he's doing something, let me do something too. Then he says, lowest price. The guy in the middle panicked, right? Best quality price. What he did was he put a bigger sign of all and say main entrance. So the guy, so it's actually an opportunity as an entrepreneur. Any questions for Ben now before we continue? Actually, Ben, yeah.
So what are you? Why?
How long do we have for me to answer? we should just have pizza and I'll tell you.
Okay, the one reason for
maybe I'm still confused.
Done?
Similar question, but I guess that question is relevant when you started. But now, after almost 30 years,
Not almost 18 years. 1980.
where are you? Can you keep going for another 20 years? Are you looking to exit? Looking to retire? Looking to head off to one of your field?
I have a few different things that I would be happy with. It doesn't have to be specifically one way or another. I'm in no hurry to retire because I really enjoy what I'm doing. So that's actually upfront. I told some potential investors and all that. I am not looking for a exit per se. I openly admit, I would like to be less worried about money. I would like to have more working capital to expand. But I'm not looking to, I can't even play a good game of golf, you know. I do this really great trick. I can make the grass fly further than the ball. So I'm not golfing, I don't like fishing, it's too boring. I like engineering a network. I enjoy pretty much running companies. That being said, you pay me enough, you want me to get out, that's okay. So that's my point. Yes, I'm looking for investment, I'm looking to expand. I'm not me itself looking for an exit because I enjoy what I'm doing and I think that's what's kept me going throughout in partial answer to your question. Because if you're doing something that you don't like, you're just looking to get out in whatever profession or otherwise you're in, just waiting to retire. I'm not waiting to retire. I would like to have more time to myself, no denying that. But this is what I like to do. This is what I like to do. And at the way, hopefully not with the same kind of stress, but with some growth and all that, can I go on for another 20 years? Yeah.
I think the word that describes Benjamin, you know, all the time that I know him, is actually passion. Right? He's really passionate about what he does. Right? And I think that's the reason why I think he is successful. I think